So, for today, we will be talking about another topic when it comes to maintaining your consulting profession. And for this particular session, it's going to be focused on managing your clients. Now, client management is actually a very comprehensive, very deep topic that the discussion on client management can take a very long time. In fact, it can be a separate course in itself. There are many techniques, many tools that is being offered as far as client management is concerned. But for our purposes, in order to understand how client management can be done in an adequate manner in relation to IT consulting, we will talk about some of the tips. Some of them very general, others can be pointed. Okay, but the idea for this session is not to really cover the topic of client management in a very comprehensive manner. Now, we'll start off with the basic ideas. Now, if your business is to succeed, naturally you have to put the client first. Okay? The literature calls this the centricity of the customer or customer centricity. Okay? And we've learned this for many years, even many centuries, that in order for businesses, for enterprises to really thrive, that tendency or that inclination to take care of the client first is basically staple, basically a fundamental principle. Okay, and for those who choose to ignore the idea that clients have to be put in the forefront of every business, run the risk of actually losing their business. Okay, now if you think about it, in any consulting profession, naturally client management or the centricity of the customer is at the heart of every consulting profession. Okay, and for this particular session, we will talk about three areas of client management. First, we'll talk about how do we get clients. Okay, other books or other literature materials would consider this as customer acquisition. So, how do we acquire customers? Okay, so that's the first area. The second area is maintaining clients. Now that we have clients, okay, in consulting, it is very rare that your relationship is one off. Okay, this means that if you're done doing one particular engagement, that engagement can actually be renewed for other projects, other activities, okay, other initiatives. So the idea of maintaining clients is also important when we're dealing with them. And naturally, the last area is in relation to retaining clients. Okay, this refers to making sure that even if we don't have anything else to do with the client, so how do we try to keep them? How do we keep the relationship? Okay. Uh, Take note that maintaining clients and retaining clients. Okay, maintaining clients. This would mean that okay, you're doing something already with a client. Okay, it's already running. You're about to finish. Okay, so all throughout that journey, you call that you maintain your client, right? You don't want your client to jump ship, okay, out of frustration or discouragement with you and move to a competitor. Retaining clients, on the other hand, this would already pertain to engagements that have already been closed. So you're done with the client. Okay, what else do we need from you? Okay, as far as the client goes. So in a way, when you look at retaining clients, you're also looking at it from the perspective of how do we re-obtain that client for us. And as you see it, it forms a very neat cycle. Okay. Now, obtaining clients. Okay, two ideas here would be how do you sell without selling? Okay, seems paradoxical, uh, but before you know it, you're actually selling in whatever circumstances you find yourselves into. Okay, you're actually selling, but how do you really sell without appearing that you're selling, right? In the sense that your clients don't get that feeling that you're in it just to siphon off money from them, from your clients. How do you make your clients feel that your relationship, your engagement with them is a very genuine engagement? And second idea is being careful with what you promise. So a lot of this uh, idea comes from how do we structure an engagement. Okay. The terms and conditions, the agreements, the alignments, the expectations. How do we make sure that that engagement is actually worth what you say that engagement is? Okay. So that's the first part regarding obtaining clients. Now, how do we sell without selling? How do we make it appear that we're not just after their money? Okay, that we're genuinely interested with solving the problem that they might have. Well, that's the first thing. Obviously, you want to have that mindset that when you're going out there, you're meeting with potential clients. Remember, they're not yet your clients. They're potentially your clients. They don't probably even know who you are. They probably don't even know what you can offer to them. Okay? So they're not yet in your pockets, right? You want to be able to convince them that you're worth paying for, right? So how do you do that without giving the initial impression that you're just really after their money? Okay. Now, back in the old days, how consulting or even other professional services companies go about with obtaining clients is that they do cold calls. Cold calls would be like I have a list of names and numbers that I intend to call. Just call out of the blue, no introduction, no preparatory work, nothing of that sort. Just pick up the phone, dial the number, and call, and make the pitch. Okay, or mass mailings. Okay, the more common term that we see nowadays would be junk mails, right? You get a lot of these things. Okay, even before the use of emails, okay, a lot of companies would receive hard copy junk mails. Okay, really pushing the idea that okay, company XYZ can do something for you. Okay, and that is how it's done when you're trying to build your clients back in the old days. But here, when it comes to the profession of consulting nowadays, right? Cold calls, mass mailings, junk mails, the probability of actually getting something from them, or what we call conversions, meaning you make these potential clients as actual clients, okay? Uh, a lot of this would require existing relationships. Okay, this means that your potential client is somebody that you know, or somebody from your organization would already know, and it has to start with that existing relationship. Okay, uh, now obviously, if you want to build relationships, you have to market. But when you market, you're not selling your services yet. Okay, and there are many ways of actually building your brand, okay, or marketing yourselves without giving them the impression that you're in the market to actually do consulting work. What would be examples? Well, publishing books and articles. This gives you that idea that you are a thought leader, okay, that you know your stuff. Okay? And by doing these things, you're not really selling yourself, you're not selling your services to the market yet, but at least the market knows that you're a credible person to deal with. You could be consulted, okay, but yeah, I mean the idea behind this is that you're just trying to create that brand. You're creating that brand that you're a credible person, that you're a credible professional, that you know your stuff in this area, and that's what you're doing. And remember, that's the important thing about consultants. The consultants' value, if you may, is that they know their stuff. They're credible. Okay, they're credible. They're competent. Okay. Now, another way to market is performing extensive community service, no? Doing outreach activities, sometimes doing this for free, you know. And for larger consulting firms, you sponsor conferences, presentations, workshops, all this stuff. Okay. So, and that's the difficult thing, rather, when it comes to building relationships or marketing yourself out into the real world. You will have to spend money, you'll have to spend time, And if you think about it, there's really no way around it. If you don't present yourself as somebody competent and credible to the general public, to the general market, nobody's going to approach you for any consulting work. Now, the second idea in obtaining clients that you have to be careful what you promise. Okay, always remember that a consultant can only fulfill a promise if the promise is reasonable. Okay, well, in short, you don't overpromise. Don't try to to say you can give them the moon and the stars, okay, but you can't even go to the next corner out in your street. I mean, that sort of exaggerated sense, right? You don't try to promise. You don't overpromise at all. Okay. Uh, the idea there is that yeah, you don't overpromise, but you don't fall into the other end of the spectrum wherein you don't promise anything at all. It's like you're under promising. Well, if you're under promising, then that gives you the risk of presenting yourself as somebody who is not competent, right? Yeah, you're credible, you're believable, you're a person of integrity, but if you can't even do perhaps the most basic things because you're thinking of under promising, then you're not going to be viewed as somebody competent. So instead, balance the demand of the clients with the capabilities that you have. Okay, and it's very important that you are clear about what you can deliver. You're clear about your own capabilities. Okay? And sometimes it's hard. Perhaps due to ego, we can have this bias that we are knowledgeable or skilled more than we actually are. Okay, if you've heard of that psychology term, the Dunning Kruger effect. Okay, people tend to be confident, rather, people tend to be overconfident when in reality they don't really have the skills to actually back up their overconfidence. Okay, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have people who are not really that super confident. They're not overconfident for sure, but they're actually the more competent folks out there. Okay, so balance it out. I mean, sometimes in our eagerness to actually grab that client, close the deal, we tend to overpromise, even slightly overpromise, right? But that's the difficulty there. I mean, the clients will eventually find out if all you've been doing was overpromising. Okay, that will impact your credibility. Okay. Now, the usual trick is that if the client would like you to do more, then you can always split it into a future project. Okay, or sometimes if you really don't have the capability to do so, you can be honest and say that you don't have that capability, and you might as well refer them to somebody else. Sometimes even to a competitor. Okay. Uh, yeah, you run the risk of losing that client forever, maybe, but if that client is gone forever, perhaps that client is not worth keeping in the first place. Okay? But if you've treated them genuinely, even if they're not your clients yet, the returns will come. Uh, Experience has shown that such good clients, okay, tend to refer their friends, their partners to those who've shown goodwill to them, right? So the returns may not be immediate, okay, they're not short term, but you can be assured that if you are careful in not taking the road of overpromising, okay, and making sure that you know yourself enough to say, okay, this is what I can offer to you, okay. Anything else outside of that, it's either we do it some other time or I refer you to somebody else. That can actually give you more returns than as opposed to really trying to overpromise, get everything, and then you run the risk of under delivering. So, how do we go about in obtaining our clients? Well, we have to identify the client. Okay, and it's like making friends. You like to make friends with a lot of people, so but you can't really keep all of them, right? Some friends, yeah, they're keepers, right? You like to be with them for very long time, and the feeling is mutual. Your friend would like to probably deal with you for a very long time as well. Same thing with a client. You want to identify a client that you really want to deal with as a client. Okay. At the same time, you have that feeling, you have that sense that this client really like to work with you. Okay, moving forward. And another action item here is you create a pull demand rather than a push demand. Push demand is something very similar to hard selling, right? You really sell, you do an in-your-face type of tactic that say, "No, this is what we can do, X, Y, Z." Okay, but a pull demand is something different. It's reverse. You try to create a situation wherein you position yourself as a credible source of solution to whoever would want that type of solution. Okay, and you're just going. It's as if you're not gonna do anything about it. Just wait for them to come. We'll see that in a little while. Okay, so identifying a client. Okay, the challenge is not just identifying your client. You have to really go deeper. You really have to know that client in and out. Okay, you know the past, the history of the client. You know what's really keeping them busy nowadays. You know what their current concerns are, and you even know their future. You know their plans moving forward. You know what's up ahead. Okay, and you have to understand that each client can have their own particular agenda that you must consider and balance. Okay, the knowledge of the true identity of your clients and a strategy for handling competing sets of needs. Okay, you have your own needs, they have their own needs. How do you balance that out? Okay, it's not an easy task. Nobody said it was easy. But obviously, when you're trying to identify your client and going through this getting to know you type of stage, you really have to dedicate time and attention up front. And the second idea, when we want to create a pull demand rather than a push demand, okay, rather than sticking a foot in the door and barging in cold, typical of a hard sell, okay, cold calls and the like, you build a reputation and you let that precede you. You let your reputation, your credibility speak for you. That's why a lot of consultants really spend a lot of effort, a lot of money building their reputation. In fact, that's the essence of consulting. Nobody would like to consult somebody with poor credibility, right? Nobody would like to consult with someone who hasn't demonstrated competency in a particular field that is of interest to you. Okay, so if you're a consultant, what do you do now? How do you create that aura, if you may? Well, you have to let your reputation precede you. Okay, put the client in a position to recognize that you're the one who can fill her need, that she'll call you. It's not as easy as you think it is, but when you are actually able to do it very well, rest assured people will come to you. People would want to go and talk to you. People would want to have a piece of your time. They'll run after you. They might even pay you just to get that opportunity to just talk to you. Okay, you can be in that position. Right? It's like an appearance fee or a talent fee up front, right? You're just going to show up. They pay you for showing up. Okay, so you want to be able to create that type of demand, that type of image or aura, that you're somebody credible, that you're somebody who is a true expert in this area, and that's not easy for any consultant. You expect consultants to actually spend a lot of time building their name, building their brand, building their reputation, their credibility in whatever field they find themselves in. Now, the second area in client management is client maintenance. Okay, so what are you going to do as you are delivering something for the client? Okay, so here are a few things that you want to keep in mind. Okay, engaging the client in the process. This means that you don't want your client to be put on the side. Okay, involve them. Always looking on over your shoulder. Okay, well, this could mean a lot of things. Making sure that you're also protecting your client, but even competitors can chip away your advantage. Okay, okay. It's good to always be mindful of everything around you. Keeping the client team on your side, getting their buy-in, making sure that they understand you. Learning to deal with liability client team members. Okay, so especially if you're dealing with multiple people on the client side, there could be people, employees from the client organization who may not really like you as a consultant. So how do you deal with these people? We'll see that in a while. Plucking the low-hanging fruit. Okay, it's nice once in a while to be ambitious, but we also need to know how to identify the quick wins. Okay, that's another term for low-hanging fruit. I mean, why would you want to spend so much time and energy for a very ambitious target when a much easier target is presented in front of you and you know for a fact that it can be done with minimal to no effort required? So why shouldn't you pay attention to that opportunity? And lastly, aside from getting the buy-in of liability client team members, you want to get buy-in throughout the organization. Overall, these six things that you see in front of you right now, if you can sum it up, it's really just about relationship. Taking care of your client, everybody in there, making sure that they're satisfied, that they're content, that they're happy with whatever it is that you're delivering for them. So how do we go about in doing this client maintenance work? Well, you create involvement opportunities. Okay, you make sure that they get involved as often as possible, as frequent as possible. It's not enough that you just come in, do the work, get out. That's not the behavior that's expected of every client. Okay, you really have to deal with the client often. Even if you're the type of person who says, I'm not very sociable, I don't really like to deal with a lot of people. You hear this excuse, I'm an introverted person. Well, introverts can be successful consultants as well. Okay, and it means that spending some time, okay, more often than not, structured time with clients. Okay, and it has to be done all the time. It has to be done frequently. And the location or the locus of problem solving is best done in the client's backyard. It's not as if that, okay, I see the client, but then you go back to your own store, your own shop, your own company, you do the solution there, then you come up with a product and just deliver it to the client side. No. I mean, what's important is to actually do the activities, the work within the client's backyard, as they say. Okay. Does this mean that you have to be on site with the client all the time? Not necessarily. Okay. In fact, it may not be practical to bring like the entire team to the client site. Okay. But definitely, okay, you will need to spend time with the client. Okay. You will need to spend time with them. Now, another important element in successful integration is incessant communication. Okay, just trying to communicate with them. And we've talked about this earlier about the importance of over communication within your team. Okay, same idea. You want to keep on communicating with your clients because this gives them that impression. Okay, and it's not just for the sake of building impressions, right? This is really a genuine attempt to actually involve them with you. Now, there are some clients who don't want to be bothered. I mean, it's possible. You just have to, calibrate on the type of communication that would be appropriate for them. But it doesn't mean that you will not communicate anymore, right? Maybe instead of meetings with them, they're probably okay with emails or brochures or reports every so often. Maybe they like that. Or maybe they're the types who would like to be involved in meetings often. So you always invite them to meetings. Okay, so just as we favor over communication among team members, so do we recommend keeping your client well fed with relevant information. Now, the key term here is relevant. We don't want to bombard them with useless information, right? So if you keep on sending them emails that's like spam, well, I don't think that's appropriate for them. Okay, so you also have to be very judicious on what information that you'd like to share with them every so often. Now, the last portion on client management is retaining clients. Okay, the work is primarily relationship driven, and the key to retention is ultimately meeting and exceeding client expectations. Okay. We know this already. Consulting is about relationships. It's not just about delivering the solution. Okay, but nevertheless, okay, in order for you to build on that relationship, you have to deliver well. So be rigorous about the implementation. Okay? Understand that the one who will use whatever recommendation or solution that you're going to give to the client will be the client herself. So make sure that the client has the ability to really follow through and implement your solution. In addition, before you head off to the next problem, whether it's within that client or a different client, present a clear implementation plan that that includes exactly what should be done, by whom, and when. Very clear. Okay. And you'll notice that you probably have heard of this in perhaps in project management classes. Okay. This applies not only to consulting projects, but also to internal projects that hinge on future activities for eventual value generation. Okay. So how do we go about in making sure that we retain our clients even after we're done doing something for them? Well, share and then transfer the responsibility. The fact that you've been involving them already from the beginning, okay, it makes it now easier for you to get them to co-own the solution that you've proposed. Okay. And second idea is to make the client a hero. It's not just like, it's just trying to make them feel good, right? Like make them appear that they're like the superstars of everything. Well, making the client a hero, that's really perhaps another way or an exaggerated way of having that focus, okay, of making the client the center of all of your activities. Okay. So definitely, when you're done with the engagement, at some point you'll have to learn to let go. You don't want to keep lingering around with a client, especially if you've done what you've been asked to do. Okay. The first step is to take the risk of some inefficiency in order to involve the client in a greater role. Okay. Sometimes, no matter how nice our solution might be, once we start handing it off to the client, it's not going to be perfect. They'll probably have a different idea of how to go about with it. They might even struggle initially on how to go about with it. But that's fine. Let them do it. Eventually, they will be at a level where that's going to be efficient in the same way as how you've envisioned it. But in the end, the ones who will actually use the solution will be the client, okay, and not you. So it's never about you. Whenever you're doing consulting work, it's never about you. It's always about the client. And making the client a hero. Now, if you view your job as a challenge to help clients win, rather than focusing on how you win, okay, good things will happen. Again, customer centricity, okay, making the client the center of every activity you're doing in consulting, okay. You want them to win. You want them to benefit whatever it is that you're proposing for them, okay. But this does not suggest that you should abandon all basic profitability considerations, right? To the point that you're making them the heroes, but you end up spending a lot of money that hasn't been foreseen initially. You want to make sure that you also try to earn something also on the side. It's not contradictory, like making sure that they win versus you being profitable as well. These are not contradictory targets. Okay? In fact, they can go hand in hand. Okay? But it does suggest thinking of others first as you make daily decisions. Okay? I guess just like in any other service management role, I mean, your focus is always the customer. Okay? You want the customer to win, and you'll do whatever is reasonable on your part to make sure that the customer wins. Reasonable is the operative term there. Okay, you're not going to, spend more time than necessary. You're not going to spend more money than necessary. Okay, but these things, how do you determine how much time is necessary, how much money is necessary? Well, there are guidelines that you can use. Okay, each company would have their own policies around it. Okay, but nevertheless, it's not impossible. So as we wrap everything up, okay, so what are some of the advices in terms of managing your clients? Well, the goal is not to involve the client or just involving the client. Okay, uh, the, the more difficult aspect here is where in the process should you want to involve the client and where in the process should you not involve the client. Okay, you know obviously that the client has to be involved in general. I mean that's the clear thing, right? If you want the client to be the center of attention as far as your consulting activities go, okay, nobody's arguing against that, right? Now the question is, where do you involve your client? Now, okay, I need to involve my client, but how do I involve him or her? That is the main challenge as consultants. Do you involve the client at the start, all the way in between, towards the end? And when I involve the client, do I involve everyone in the client organization? Or do I involve some people only? Okay. Do I involve just a key decision maker? Do I involve which decision maker? Okay. And this goes back to an earlier topic. We've talked about the roles. Okay. Within the client organization, we know that there are different types of positions or roles that's being played by the client organization. So which ones do you want to be involved? Okay. At which parts of the process? Now, first you go ahead with quick wins or plucking some low hanging fruit with a pilot program. Okay, well, how do we go about it as well? You can pick a particular product or division with a meaningful client and identify areas where the client can safely become involved in the efforts designed to meet that particular client's needs. Okay, so if especially this is true with a new client, so how do you go about in building your reputation with that client? Well, you just pick something that is low hanging. You do it in a form of a pilot or proof of concept. You might even have to spend your own money to do that. Okay, there are times that might be the case. Okay, but if you can't afford to really pay it yourself, that you really need to charge your client, well, you give them something wherein they don't really have to pay much money, and the expected return is really high. So you're looking for a high rate of return. Okay, at the start. Okay. Now, it's only when you've gained some momentum you can broaden the effort throughout the organization. You can go with more ambitious projects, more complex initiatives. Okay? But when you're starting with a new client, always start with something that's easy to do, low hanging fruit. You pilot it, make them go through it, okay, initially, and then once it's done, okay, you're okay with it. Now you can do more for that client. Now, secondly, you control the process. Okay, you don't want the client to be the ones to run the show for you, because when that happens, you lose control over what you can or cannot do, and you might end up having to spend more than what is necessary. You might end up exerting more time and energy more than what is necessary. Okay, this is what they say. You you give them an inch, and they really stretch it out into a mile for you. So in this case, be clear about the scope of the involvement. Okay? In project management, we know this to be a very challenging issue, scope creep. So if your terms and condition is not okay, it's that's not well established, then you can expect the client to, sometimes take advantage of it. Okay, maybe ask you to do more than what you're really prepared to give. Okay, so by being clear about the scope, well, that includes your goals, your targets, your deliverables. Okay, that also means the timing. Okay, when you expect to do all these things, and what are the exact expectations? Down to the last detail. What are they supposed to see after all this? What are they not going to see? Even the things that are excluded, you have to be explicit about it as well. So, wrapping this up, okay, a consultant works hard to involve its clients in the creation of change in their organizations. Okay, the centricity of the client, very important. And most industries can learn a valuable lesson by considering how to more actively involve their customers or clients in their delivery efforts as well. We see this nowadays, especially with technology helping in a lot of the production work. Okay, for example, you see a lot of customers now being involved in the production process, uh, and this creates highly customized products. Okay. Of course, initially we were thinking that if we go through that route, a highly customized product can be very costly for the company. Okay, so much so that the margins might be very low. I mean, that's quite possible. Now, moreover, we as individuals learn to stand a lesson or two about the importance of putting others first. And with that, we end our topic on managing our client. So if you have any questions about this particular topic, please feel free to email me or leave a comment. Then I will address them as soon as I can. So with that, thank you very much for listening to me and see you around. Thank you.